Hey everyone, this is Leslie and you're watching Midlife and Nailing It. If you could please hit the subscribe button and the notification bell, I'd really appreciate it. It helps my channel out. Today I'm participating in a quarantine cooking collab. The hosts are Kenya's Decor channel, The Sister Circle, and This and That with Denise Jordan. I'll include links to their channels in my description box below, as well as a link to the playlist. I can't wait to see what everyone comes up with. I'm going to be doing a variation of a cream pie. I'll be doing an Oreo cookie cream pie, but I'll also be showing you different variations of a cream pie so that you can use what you've got on hand. Cooking during this quarantine can be challenging at times, but if we're resourceful and we get inspiration from others, we can do it, guys. So let's go ahead and get started. Today I'm going to show you how to make a very simple pudding cream pie with whatever you have on hand. The pie that I decided to make is actually going to be an Oreo pudding cream pie because I happened to have this cookies and cream pudding on hand, and then I also have some Oreo cookies for my crust. Because this is a quarantine cooking collab, that you could make any kind of pudding cream pie. They're so simple, and yeah, so if you have like Oreos on hand or any brand cookie that's like an Oreo on hand, you can totally make a crust out of that with just the cookie and butter. But you could also make a crust out of graham crackers and butter. That would be good with any pudding that you might have on hand or any homemade pudding you'd like to make. Instead of the cookies and cream pudding that I've got right here, you could totally use a chocolate pudding. The dark or milk chocolate pudding or any kind of chocolate pudding. You could also use a vanilla pudding and add bananas or coconut to that. That would work and be really good. You could do any kind of store-bought crust here. It doesn't have to be a cookie or a graham cracker crust. You can get those already made if you have an Oreo one on hand or a graham cracker crust on hand. You can also use like the Pillsbury dough crust that you can get frozen or refrigerated. Those would work too, or any other brand for that matter. They also sell like the Jiffy mix pie crust and other brands like that. You could use that, or you could make a pie crust from scratch as well. So the base of this pie is super versatile, like anything you have on hand really. And I'll go ahead and put a recipe to a graham cracker crust below, and then I'll also put the recipe for a homemade vanilla pudding as well. And if you made a homemade vanilla pudding, you could totally add some kind of chocolate to it to make it a chocolate pudding if you wanted to go that route. And then of course I'll include the recipe to everything I'm doing here as well. So for our pie crust, I'm using Oreo cookies and butter. And then I'm just doing what the package calls for on this Oreo cookies and cream pudding. I'm using 2 of them. You will need 2 puddings to fill your pie. And then I've got milk because that's the only thing it calls for on the back. And then I'm doing a topping for my pie. This is totally optional. You don't need it at all. It'll be good without anything if you didn't have anything on hand. But I am going to use this heavy whipping cream. And then I'll just add some sugar once I've whipped this up enough, and I will show you guys how to do this. A while ago, when I was a brand new channel back in November or early December, I made a chocolate cream pudding pie. I'm going to go ahead and include a link to that recipe video as well. I am using a 7x11 Purex here. I don't have any of my pie pans on hand. A lot of my stuff is in storage because we're building right now. So having said all of that, let me go ahead and get situated here and we'll get started. Okay everybody, so I am about to make the Oreo pie crust. And so what it is 14 Oreos, which I put in my little smoothie maker here because I don't have a food processor. So I'm just going to use this. You could also use one of those hand grinder things or a blender, anything you have on hand. I think you could make it work. You just want to get the Oreo cookies very ground up and fine. And then all I did was melt a stick of butter here. So I'm gonna go ahead and pour this on top of my Oreo cookies. Okay guys, so now all I'm doing is spreading my pie crust out into my casserole dish. And then I just grabbed a spatula and I'm kind of smoothing out the edges there. Okay guys, so I have this spread out in my dish and I'm going to go ahead and refrigerate this for 30 minutes. Okay, so the next thing that I want to do is go ahead and make my boxed pudding mix. I'm going to make 2 of these. Okay guys, you can totally laugh at me for giving you a close-up of the pudding mixes and not even putting it in the frame. Oh my gosh, I'm totally nailing it, right? I'm midlife and nailing it for a reason. They're 4.2 ounces, and I'm going to do that as directed. It's just 2 cups of cold milk, and you just whisk it up until it firms up. I misspoke just a second ago because I'm using the 2 packages. This is actually 4 cups of milk. So my 4 cups of milk are in there, and I'm going to grab my whisk. You could use a hand mixer here as well, but when it comes to box pudding, I just use my whisk. It doesn't take that long at all. It's super fast the way it comes together if you've never made a box pudding. I'm imagining most of you have. I don't know that I would use a hand mixer because I feel like that would really crunch up your Oreo in there, because even me whisking it right now is doing that. So if you happen to get your hands or you have this Oreo pudding mix, I would use a whisk. But of course, with any other box pudding, you could totally use your hand mixer. I mean, that's, in my opinion, firm enough, because I'm just going to pour it on that pie crust when that's done setting up. And it'll firm up more in the fridge in a minute. Okay guys, so you want to pick up a heavy whipping cream. This is what the wording is at the grocery store when you're wanting to make your whipped cream. If you didn't want to even go to this much trouble, you could totally use Cool Whip, or you could use whipped cream, you know, that you buy in the little squirty thing that you got to shake up and everything. Yeah, so I'm just adding this to my bowl. I'm going to put the whole thing in. Okay, so I'm just using my handheld mixer here, and I'm just whipping the cream up until it makes peaks on its own, and I'll make sure to show you that in a second here, what that looks like. This, see how I'm making peaks and they're not falling back down? This is what it will look like when it's done. If you keep mixing, it kind of starts to separate and kind of make butter. So you want to make sure that you pull it when it looks like this. So I add about a 1/4 cup to a 1/2 cup of sugar to this. It's kind of to taste. So I would start with the 1/4 cup, and you want to use a spatula and kind of fold it in, give it a taste, and if you want it to be a little sweeter, then add a little more sugar. I wouldn't recommend adding more than a 1/4 cup at a time. I happen to know I like a 1/2 cup in here, so I'm going to go ahead and do a 1/2 cup of sugar into my whipped cream. Okay, so I am just folding this in very gently. Perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and pull out my pie crust, and we'll put all of this together. So I'm not sure what happened here, but I lost a little bit of footage. I pulled the pie crust out of the refrigerator, and I'm putting my pudding on top here, and I'm just smoothing it and making sure it's spread evenly. So my advice with putting your whipped cream on is that you kind of put it in the center, and then you spread it out from there. And you want to have a big, mound in the center when you do this, or your pudding will pick up into your whipped cream. And I mean, if it's just your family, I'm sure they don't give a rip. This is quarantine cooking, so Queen Elizabeth isn't coming. Just do your best. It's all pudding and whipped cream and Oreo. What won't they like? Okay, so I've got my whipped cream on, and I'm moving right along. See the layers of Oreo, and then my pudding and my whipped topping. You could do all of this from scratch or whatever, but we're quarantine cooking right now. You're probably cooking way more than you usually do. I know that I am, and I'm sick of it, quite frankly, but this is a little dessert that you can just throw together to kind of put smiles on people's faces. You keep it in the fridge, and there you go. For a few days, 2 or 3 days, probably less than that with my teenagers, but 2 or 3 days, you've got a little dessert here. Just to put a smile on your family's faces. At the last second here, I decided I'm going to crunch up some Oreos, so I just put it in this Gladware bag, and I'm going to use the end of this wooden spoon, and I'm going to crunch these up to sprinkle on top of my dessert. You could do shaved chocolate here. You could leave it plain. And again, if you don't have the ingredients for the whipped cream, it would be good without it. Any kind of pie crust, any kind of pudding. It's really simple, guys. Okay, everybody, this is what my little Oreo cookie cream pie turned out like. I just went ahead and sprinkled the Oreo cookie on top, and then I just put 2 little Oreos on there to make it cute. You could top yours off with whatever you wanted. Some shaved chocolate. If you did a chocolate pudding pie, you could do some shaved chocolate. You could do little chocolate chips. The little mini ones would be good. Yeah, you can basically do whatever you want. And if all you had was the pudding on hand, you don't need to do a whipped topping. That's not necessary. It will still be super good. And again, I'm going to go ahead and put a link in my description box below. I made a chocolate pudding pie the end of November, early December, that I put a video out about. And so I'll go ahead and link that so you can see another variation of a cream pie. Because really, the sky's the limit here with whatever you have on hand. You don't have to have the exact ingredients that I did. You surely don't. So the recipe I used will be in the description box below. And I'll go ahead and include a homemade vanilla pudding recipe, a homemade chocolate pudding recipe, and I will also include a graham cracker crust recipe as well, and a homemade pie crust recipe too. I hope everyone is staying safe. Please stay home. Stay home completely if you can. Stay home as much as possible. And everyone take care. I'm thinking about all of you during this time, and I hope that this little dessert, if you make for your family, puts a smile on all of your faces. I'll see you soon.